Hello, everybody. Today is a day in October. My name is Daniela, and I'm here to talk to you about all the books I read in November of 2023. So, friends, this video is introducing you to the idea of Bookvember, which is November, where I read a book a day every day for the whole month. That's 30 books in 30 days. I attempted this challenge last year, and so I'm here to talk about that. But I am also hoping to redo this challenge this year, 2024. I've already selected my 30 books. I have to go through the part of the challenge where you prep them. You select the 30, you select a vague order, and then you wrap them and do them in brown paper and gift paper and whatever you want, but you have to wrap them individually. And then they're all stacked up. And when November rolls around, you open one a day. Hopefully I will be able to do vlogs. I did mini vlogs last year, but I'm hoping to take you along my reading journey more this year, November 2024. Join me on my Substack, quakers.substack.com. I'm hopefully going to be most active on there. So the idea is you try to read one book a day. How did this go last year? It went well. You want to know if I did it? Did I read all 30 books? No. I read 20, 3 afterwards, and I have 7 books left, and they will be incorporated into the books I'm reading this year, which is exciting. What else? It did work as a challenge to help me fall back in love with reading again. I was able to get through so many books. One of the reasons I was even prompted to begin the challenge was because I had a huge stack of books that I just wanted to knock out. And I do. Now I have a big stack of books that I have read. And I have another big stack that I'm trying to get through again this year. My hope is that this year I will actually accomplish the 30 and 30. And listen, 20/23 in 30/32 is no laughing matter. But I don't know. I'm a completionist. I'd like to get to the goal. It's important to me that I still derive an equal amount of joy, even if I don't accomplish the challenge. It is, even though I was a little bit inspired by the idea of Ramadan, it's not Ramadan religious at all. It is also to help fast with screens and technology and take your focus off of other things and put it into something that I think is worthwhile. So that's the spirit of the challenge. I hope the frame can see me. I hope you can see me because I did not check my frame. I will give you little summaries of what each book was that I read last year and what I thought of it. Most of them I enjoyed, most of them I liked. One of them I really disliked. Stay tuned for that. The first one I want to talk about, not the first one I read, but the first one I would like to talk about is The River Between by Ngugi wa Thiong'o, which is part of the African Writers series. It's a pretty slim volume, and it basically deals with colonization, but like view of the sort of short history, but like the history of these children that grow up post contact with white men, the settlers, the converters to Christianity. And it basically just follows the destruction of the town as these ideas take over and people fight one another and all of the regular social dynamics. And I read it where I'm recording here at Yale when I visited my sister here for Thanksgiving, and it was really quick. It was really prosaic, but it was also super impactful. It was very fabled, but still had a lot of like hard looks at the human psyche and how humans relate to each other and the kinds of things they will do to each other for vengeance and for each other out of proximal love. It's one of the ones I would definitely check out. That brings me to Whose Names Are Unknown by Sonora Bab, which covers the Dust Bowl. Her ethnographic notes were used by Steinbeck to write The Grapes of Wrath, but by the time she wrote her own book, it was overlooked and barely published until very recently. It's an essential read, especially for understanding the historical context of the Dust Bowl, and it's kind of very stark and intimate, but still kind-hearted look at the people that this major tragedy affected. What Night Brings by Carla Trujillo is another recommendation. It's from the perspective of a child living in a domestically abusive household, and it's powerful. The narrative offers a raw and honest look at family dynamics. I came across this book because it was recommended by one of my classmates when I was doing my master's. She was a PhD student, and her English thesis was on this book. It's powerful and worth the read. Make It Plain by Vernon E. Jordan was another library pick. This book delves into the role of a civil rights leader, exploring the pitfalls and experiences within that space. I was drawn to the title and found the book engaging, especially in its discussion of the power of speeches that stir emotions and mobilize people towards civil action. How to stir emotions and inspire action. I found it fascinating, especially as someone interested in the power of oration. It's a great read if you're interested in social justice and activism and like to read speeches. Another library find was The Revolution Will Not Be Funded. I'm so into this book that I might do a separate video on it. It's a compilation of papers presented at a conference focusing on how nonprofits operate and why they are the way they are. And they're presented in a highly accessible way, and it makes for complex academic writing that feels legible and engaging. If you're interested in why nonprofits function the way they do, this book offers some eye-opening insights. Moving on to elements of Indigenous style, I bought this book for my sister and my husband. It's a Canadian style guide that provides insights into the history and current relations with the Indigenous people, presented through the lens of why things are stylized in a certain way. It is foremost a style guide. Despite its small size, it's packed with valuable information. If you're interested in Indigenous writing or just want to know more about the history of Native Americans in Canada, it's a great primer. Isle of the Unseen by J. Willow Wilson is a gorgeous book. I read it a long time ago, back in middle school, and it's still one of my favorites. It's a modern story infused with classical Islamic knowledge set against the backdrop of the Arab Springs. It's an incredible adventure novel, rich storytelling, and I highly recommend it. On the poetry front, We Are Owed by Ariana Brown is a standout. A powerful poetry collection by one of my favorite poets, who, by the way, follows me on Instagram. Brown is a Texan Mexican American poet, and this collection explores the intersection of being Black American and Mexican American, and hence Black Mexican. I bought this book specifically because that intersection will be part of my children's identity, but also just because the poetry is outstanding, and I'm a longtime fan. One of my favorite poems is in it about the Spanish words we have for textured hair. It's a small press book, so you'll have to buy it to read it, but it is absolutely worth it. And I think you can find Ariana Brown on her Patreon, where she does events and has classes and workshops. And if you, I think, follow her on Patreon for $5, there's discounts for all of these things. And there's regular writing sessions. Just go check her out. She's amazing. Next up is Building a Trauma-Informed Educational Practice by M. Daniels. It was a must read for me when I was teaching at the Shawangunk Correctional Facility. It's very much a practitioner's manual on how to handle the tense power dynamics like prisons, juvenile detention centers. It's a great resource for any teacher working in an environment where there's a significant power imbalance. How to Do Nothing by Jerry Odell is another book I picked up. It's often mischaracterized as a self-help because it says how to do, but it's really more of an artistic treatise on the concept of doing nothing and its place in the American psyche. Not in the sense of laziness or choosing to enjoy oneself, but in resisting the cultural pressure for constant productivity. And just this concept that just because you are inactive doesn't mean you're doing nothing. Because once you think that your rest is part of producing, that's no longer doing nothing. The book is written in a way that's both academic and artistic, which makes it a challenging, very academic read, but I definitely super enjoyed the ideas once I got to wrap my head around them. Three Girls from Bronzeville by Dawn Turner is an absolutely immaculate memoir. It documents the history of Chicago through the lives of three girls, showing how vibrant neighborhoods were purposefully neglected until severe decline. It's a poignant and beautiful account of what it means to grow up as a Black girl in America. If you care about Chicago or the history of Black communities, this book is essential. Possibly very nostalgic depending on who you are. Dears and Thurin by Okwake Mezi is one of my all-time favorite books. I reread it for this challenge as a quick, impactful book I knew I could get through in a day. It's a series of letters, some creative, others more straightforward, but all of them deeply emotional and impactful. One of my favorite letters in this book is addressed to Dear Nonso, which I interpret as the placeholder name for any aspiring writer. It offers a procedural spell on how to make a living as a writer. It's magical and practical all at the same time. If you're interested in creative nonfiction or writing advice, this book is a must-read. How the Universe Got Its Spots by Jana Levin is a fantastic book for anyone interested in the more mind-bending aspects of physics. It's about intense physics research, but written in a way that's accessible to a general audience. This book blends mathematics with the author's personal life, offering insights into both the universe and the human experience. If you love math or physics, this book will be a treat. We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib is another incredible memoir. Habib is a queer Ahmadi Muslim from Pakistan who fled to Canada to escape religious persecution with her family when she was a child. This book explores the intersection of her identity as a queer Muslim and her experience as a refugee. One quote that sticks with me is about how the limit of someone's empathy is often their understanding of your experience. It goes, understanding of the interior lives of those who are not like us is contingent upon their ability to articulate themselves in the language we know. Damn. It's a powerful and eye-opening read, especially on the topics of forced marriage and the realities of child marriage in modern times in a way that's both eye-opening and relatable. Finally, Who Is Wellness For by Fariha Raisin is another book I discussed earlier, but it's worth mentioning again. That one is by a poet who does an investigative study on question itself of the title, who is wellness for? It's hard to describe. It's another one I might do a whole video on. I read it for group therapy with Isma to Gwendolyn, also has a Patreon, a better Substack, but they're a therapist. They're like a therapist turned revolutionary practitioner. And reading this book is really cool because it basically deals with what it confronts, who wellness is for, what wellness is, comes to a conclusion. It does this through indigenous medicine practices, but also through a very Western kind of research heavy interrogation of the wellness industrial complex and what it tells us about what we believe people deserve and what we believe about health. Just, you can't go wrong reading it. And I had a magical experience reading it in group with other people who are also equally as anti-colonial, and also of reading it with my mother. We listened to it together on audiobook when we were doing the road trip that is recorded elsewhere on my YouTube. We also were listening to that part of the way, and it was very cool to hear her digest it in real time. And then there's one more book I forgot to mention, The Iconography of Death in Pre-Colonial Mesoamerica. This one's in Spanish, and it offers a deep dive into how pre-contact Mesoamericans viewed death, their imagery, and cosmology. It's a quick but thorough read, and I found it incredibly informative and enjoyable, and it took much less time than I thought it would. It did contain a lot of images, which was helpful, and the Spanish was academic enough, but it was a slim volume, more of a primer. It's called Muerte a filo de obsidian. It's a pre-colonial perspectives on death. I'll mention another book I read, this one called We Need to Build by Ibu Patel, which I honestly didn't like. It felt shallow and poorly researched, more like fodder than anything substantive. If you're looking for something in this genre, I'd much more recommend The Purpose of Power by Alicia Garza. Instead, there are far better top books out there on the same topics. Patel's trying to aesthetics of Barack Obama without any actual substance or just fact checking. I would not recommend it. I realize I'm ending on a bit of a down note, but that's the last book in the stack. Oh, wait, there's one more. I've been waiting for this one. This book's name is A Virtue of Disobedience. A civil rights handbook for today. I love this book. It's absolutely beautiful. I'm really proud of the fact that my name is in the book. Not in the actual text of the book, but in the book itself. Why is my name in the book? I helped contribute to the crowdsourcing campaign to publish this book on a website called Unbound that basically just helps writers to disseminate their ideas and start conversations. What do I think of it? It's incredible. It's just like an amazing, balanced discussion of justice, the law, and religion and activism. Yeah, it's really profound and reflective about what it means for someone to have a religious identity and core that influences their idea of justice and how you actually need to make things happen and do for progress. Also, it's really important ideas about law and how religion and activism and these three things require balance. How you remember to live your life justly. And I don't know, it's just really moving and compelling. And I felt very reflective, and it has incredibly intelligent ideas that I just kept thinking about and examining. And I don't know, it's just really cool. And I really think you should check it out. Yes, I'd recommend it. Thanks. Very first day of Bookvember kicked off with a travel day, which in hindsight was kind of perfect for my first book, The Glossary of Semiotics. This was one of the books I was most excited about, and it did not disappoint. Let me say up front, this isn't a book for everyone. It's a glossary after all, but it's deeply connected to my academic background in linguistics, specifically semiotics. Semiotics is the study of signs and symbols and communication. It's a field that I've always been fascinated by and worked in. This glossary is more than just definitions, it's a practical tool for understanding the current vocabulary used in semiotics discussions. Even though it wasn't the easiest read, it was extremely engaging. The dense nature of the book meant I needed to read it in chunks to really absorb it. It was a great companion for unexpected travel, and by the end of November, I was so hooked that I ended up buying the other two glossaries in the set, one on epistemology and one on cognitive science. So, if you're diving into any of those topics, I recommend reading some original works first and then tackling this glossary for sure. Next up was Mutual Aid by Dean Spain. This was the second day. This is a short, accessible book that serves as a primer on mutual aid, both theoretical and practical. While it's a solid resource and definitely worth reading if you're new to the concept, I found it a little bit limiting, especially because I went into it looking for specific insights to help with organizing for survival causes. I even joined a Quaker book club on Zoom from a Costco parking lot, actually, where we had a fascinating discussion about the book. We talked about how mutual aid isn't just about giving and taking, but about doing something greater together, something that transcends the simplistic exchange of resources. While mutual aid might not have provided all the answers I was looking for, it did hammer home some of the importance of meeting each other's survival needs while critically examining why those needs remain unmet. I recommend reading it, but if you're looking for a deeper dive, you might want to pair it with some other sources. And that wraps up my book tour of last year's reading challenge. The point of this video wasn't to give you a detailed summaries or review, but to share what I thought of each book after reading one a day for a month. I'm more interested in inspiring others to take on their own reading challenges, whether you attempt this exact challenge or create your own. My hope is that you'll set aside a month to fall in love with reading again in whatever challenging yet invigorating way you feel drawn to. Thank you so much for joining me and hearing about my reading life. If you want to tell me about yours, the comments are always open. Please chat with me, friends. Write me a little comment letter and join me for this year's 2024 Bookvember starting November 1st. Keep an eye out. Goodbye, friends. I have to read a script and I also have to record, and I don't know how to do both those things. Give me just 1 second.